Welcome back to American Agenda. Since the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel 1 year ago, protests have been taking place across the United States, including a large one in Times Square just this weekend.
So the question is, who is funding all of these demonstrations? Newsmax correspondent Alana Austin takes a look at that.
Progressive activists calling for wiping Israel off the map, embroiling college campuses like George Washington University and dozens of others in the aftermath of the October 7th terror attacks on Israel and the Jewish state's military response. At Washington, D.C.'s iconic Union Station, the burning of the American and Israeli flags symbolizing the anti-Semitic rage spewing during Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's joint address to Congress. Such flashpoints representing deep divisions and raising questions about funding sources. Large-scale protests and encampments at schools included coordinated messaging with signs, tents, even catered meals. Israeli-American journalist and social activist Emily Schrader says Iran's hundreds of millions of dollars spent on disinformation campaigns, igniting tensions and creating a dangerous climate for Jewish students.
The fact that we see people making excuses is really an alarming thing that I think everyone should pay attention to. The goal of the forces behind these protests and behind this anti-American movement is not just about Jews, it's about the entire United States.
This summer, White House National Security Communications Director John Kirby acknowledging, while somewhat downplaying, Iran's role in financially backing anti-Israel protests.
We do know that Iran has been funding and encouraging some of the protest activity here in the United States. Some of it. We do not believe that all the protest activity out there on a daily basis is being fully funded by Iran.
Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines warning this, quote, "We have observed actors tied to Iran's government posing as activists online, seeking to encourage protests and even providing financial support to protesters." Americans who are being targeted by this Iranian campaign may not be aware that they are interacting with or receiving support from a foreign government.
Fellow Democrats, welcome to Chicago!
Domestically, a Politico expose identifies big names in the Democratic Party allegedly funding groups tied to campus unrest. An article uncovering ties between a foundation associated with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and recent protests. The article claims foundations formed by mega-wealthy donors, including George Soros, as well as the Pritzker and Rockefeller families, all drove dollars to groups staging anti-Israel protests. The billionaire Pritzker family donates a fortune to numerous progressive social justice causes. And according to Politico, that money directly and indirectly reaches activists with various groups, including the Immigrant Defense Project. Some attended D.C. protests that ended in numerous arrests, charges for destruction of federal property, and assaults on law enforcement. Pritzker's office not responding to Newsmax's outreaches for comment, but the governor previously dismissed the claims that his family funded anti-Israel protests, calling the reporting false and debunked.
Reporting for Newsmax, I'm Alana Austin.
All right, thanks, Alana. And joining us now, distinguished university professor at True University, Middle East analyst and Newsmax contributor, Thane Rosenbaum. Thane, thanks so much for joining us here. Of course, distinguished professor, we know it's the beginning of a new school year early in. Are you seeing a significant shift in students and their behavior towards one another, or maybe their concerns on campus? How have things changed in this past year?
Nina, I would say it's the same. Nothing has happened. Remember, the students that were purportedly punished last year were unpunished by the summer. When things calmed down, everyone got their diploma, everyone was returned to classes for the fall, everyone was able to register. The president of Brandeis was fired. Why? Because these presidents are afraid of the faculty senates and a no confidence vote. And so that's why the people that run the university are the humanities departments, the Islamist studies, the queer studies, the gender studies, the indigenous literature studies, the nonsense courses that were funded not by so much by Iran, but Qatar. You know, Qatar has given $8 billion along with Persian Gulf countries, and that's who's been funding Hamas. So there's clearly a connection. These courses and these professors were paid for by Qatar, and the university is much more willing to give up the money of Bill Ackman or Robert Kraft or Mark Rowan than to reject the money of the Persian Gulf.
You know, and you bring this up because we saw the leaders of Penn and Harvard, they after everything that happened with the rounds of protests that we saw at these schools, many of them, they had to get kicked out of these positions. Do you expect, because they weren't protecting the Jewish students, do you expect that that might change now going forward, or is this going to be all the same that we saw the first time around?
What we need is more lawsuits. Harvard, Berkeley, they're all being sued, and they should be denied federal funds because they have discriminated against Jewish students who are under Title VI entitled to have full access to university. You can't have full access to university if they're forming a human blockade and not letting you go to class, or if classes are being canceled. But John, I would just say that the university's position is still clear. We think, they would say, we think that if you hate Israel and hate Jews, we think you have a First Amendment right to hate people. And in fact, I would just say for people that are protesting today, can you both imagine, and Nina, you went to Harvard, so let's just imagine this. If people were cheering to lynch blacks in Times Square, lynch blacks, lynch blacks, lynch blacks, how would that go? Or kill Christians, kill Christians. You know, eliminating the Jewish state is, when they're saying back to 48, that means no Jews in Israel at all, a one-state solution. And for Jews, 85% of whom in the United States identify their connection to Israel as part of who they are, what you're really saying to them is, we want to commit genocide against all of your people. And somehow, in some twisted way, to kill Jews is a First Amendment right. And there's no other way to look at that. And that's what the universities are permitting to do. And that's what cities are allowing to happen today on this anniversary day, sending a message to Jews. Not only are we not going to mourn the deaths on October 7th, we're going to call for more deaths, yours.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what we're seeing right now here in New York City, right on campus. Unbelievable. Thane Rosenbaum, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on and giving us that insight.
Thank you both.
And as we continue to reflect on Hamas's vile atrocities and the attack that was October 7th, 2023, I had the opportunity to sit down with one woman who has turned that horror into positive action. We're going to have her story. That's next on American Agenda.